Now, I know we already put out our Grandmaster guide for liminality, but this is just one of those builds we had to cover in its own dedicated video. Now listen, I'm not a Warlock main, but this build is insane. What's so crazy about this build is that it literally runs itself. It's a Warlock's wet dream. This build, which I have named Ergolock, has incredible ad clearing capabilities, as well as insane ability uptime, unparalleled survivability, extremely quick transcendence generation, and a bunch of other buzzwords that really just boils down to this thing is absolutely nasty. So what's this build about? Well, our main pillars are Ergo Sum, Getaway Artist, and Transcendence. It's kind of crazy to me how many people don't realize that Ergo Sum has random rolls. This is not a static rolled exotic. Just like our exotic class items, Ergo Sum, which we have a guide out on, is an exotic sword that can roll with various different exotic traits. Essentially, Bungie saw what we did with the crafting and said, hey, let's just do that with this random roll exotic. This is the weapon you're going to be using 90% of the time. Now, the exotic trait that we want on Ergo Sum is Arc Conductor. Literally wrist runner's exotic trait, but slapped on a sword. Now, as far as the other perks, I would highly recommend either it be a wave frame sword or a caster frame sword. Either or is fine, but let's jump into why this is so good. Ergo Sum with Arc Conductor states that powered heavy attacks charges the wielder, enabling them to resist arc damage and chain lightning to nearby targets. And this is very much like Risk Runner, except you're able to self-proc it by simply doing a heavy attack. And after doing so, you will get Arc Conductor and its buff for 6 seconds. Now this will literally give you this arc bubble around your body. And while this is active, you'll be receiving 50% less damage from arc sources. Now where this differs from its original exotic is that you will passively chain lightning to nearby enemies. Just proccing this and then running around will cause lightning to chain from you to those targets, literally damaging everything. Now there also doesn't seem to be a limit to how much you can trigger this. If you're running into a pack of 15 ads, you're gonna hit all 15 of them. The only cooldown that does exist is a short one that keeps you from triggering lightning on the same enemy too quickly. So Arc Conductor exists as an ad clearing tool that would just cost you a simple heavy attack. Now taking a look at what else Ergo Sum offers. It has the perk Transcendent Duelist, and its catalyst, Transcendent Steel. Now, Duelist is one of the tools we're going to be using in this build, as it states that final blows of this weapon accelerate light and darkness mastery, deals increased damage while transcendent. Defeating targets lengthens transcendence. Now the number here is 2.5% light and 2.5% dark energy on any kill. This is on top of what is already generated from your damage. Then while you are transcendent, this increases our sword damage by a whopping 44%, with Arc Conductor's chain lightning being increased by 20%. Now as for the increased time on transcendence, it really is hard to tell. There's a lot of things we're doing here, guys, and other things contributing to dragging out that transcendence. What I will say is that it definitely feels like it lasts forever. Now the catalyst, in my opinion, is a must, this being Transcendent Steel, and it states that dealing damage with a transcendent grenade grants Ergo Sum ammo. Now this will give us 3 ammo per proc with an activation cooldown that gets a little longer after each one. But from a single grenade on a beefy target, you can expect roughly 9 to 12 ammo back. This is a very potent catalyst, guys, and I highly advise doing Grandmaster Excision to get this one. I was literally running double special throughout the entire week, and the only reason why I was able to do so is because I had the exotic catalyst present on Ergo that would feed me ammo back. Now honestly, guys, I can just literally say, hey, use Ergo Sum, use Arc Conductor, and it's potent all on its own. But the idea of this Ergolock build is to be this autonomous death ball, which takes us to our exotic armor of choice, Getaway Artist. Now this is chosen for Arc Souls, thanks to the perk Dynamic Duo that says that you can convert your arc grenade into an Arc Soul and become amplified. Essentially, guys, you eat your grenade and then boom, you grant yourself an Arc Soul. Now most of us are familiar with Arc Souls. It's free passive damage. It's very, very nice, but keep in mind, Getaway Artist makes them a bit stronger, as Getaway allows our Arc Souls to generate 5% grenade energy every time one of its bursts simply hits a target. So this exotic gives us an Arc Soul, but it also gives us grenade regeneration and even makes us amplified, which is very important for this build. So now that we've gotten our exotic weapon and armor piece out of the way, let's dive into our subclass and see all the synergies that lie there. With abilities first, our super of choice is Song of Flame. Honestly, you can swap out to whatever you want, but the super is really, really good, especially if you're taking advantage of Solar Fulmination. Then our class ability. This can also be whatever you want, but I've been trending towards Phoenix Dive just because that insta heal is really nice. For our melee, we have Arcane Needle, allowing us to gain access to that Unraveled debuff, which of course makes tangles, but also a big one is because it gives us 3 ability charges, and they all deal dark damage. Then for our grenade, this has to be a Storm Grenade. The reason why it has to be a Storm Grenade is because we're consuming it with Getaway Artist. For our aspects, to no surprise, we have Feed the Void. Considering all the abilities and things that are happening around us, Feed the Void granting us Devour literally carries this build, which yes, includes those Arc Soul kills. And keep in mind, while Devour is active, we're getting full health for each of those kills, but we're also getting 15 to 40% grenade energy depending on the tier of the enemy that we defeat. No lie, Feed the Void with Prismatic may be the best aspect in the whole game. Now for our second aspect, you have options. Personally, I think Bleak Watcher is the way to go. It's not like you haven't seen this build from us before. Essentially, when you consume your Arc Grenade on Getaway Artist, not only are you granting yourself an Arc Soul, but in that moment, you're also spitting out a Stasis Turret. Now, the main reason why I choose Stacy is simply because she has the ability to lock down the battlefield. She also does dark damage, which contributes to our Transcendence. Stacy can also stun champions. However, if you did not want to go the route of Bleak Watcher, you can of course go the route of Hellion, which yes, you can double stack with Arc Souls. I'm gonna leave that up to you. Either one is fine, but I will say considering the regeneration rates of grenades when you have Devour up, dude, you're gonna have so many Bleak Watcher turrets, you'll be spitting them out left and right. Now for our fragments, we've got 5 of them. We've got Facet of Sacrifice, where while we have an Arc, Solar, or Void buff, ability Final Blows grant bonus Darkness Transcendence energy. This fragment works to increase our dark energy gains since most of our outgoing damage is line to line. It also has 100% uptime since Devour and Amplified work here. Next is Facet of Protection, which says that while surrounded by combatants, you are more resistant to incoming damage. And while Transcendent, the effect is increased. This is great for survivability, guys. We're talking 15% damage resistance when near 3 enemies. Then after this, we have Facet of Ruin to interface with either Bleak Watcher or Hellion, which says that it increases the size and damage of the burst when you shatter a Stasis Crystal or frozen target, and increases the area of effect of solar ignitions. Then we have Facet of Hope, which states that while you have an elemental buff, your class ability regenerates more quickly. Now, we pretty much always have a buff on us, giving us a hefty increase of 60% for our class ability regeneration. Now lastly, we have Facet of Devotion, which reads that defeating targets afflicted with stasis or strand debuffs grants bonus light transcendence energy. Now we get both of those debuffs from either Arcane Needle or Bleak Watcher, and this pretty much guarantees our transcendence meter is max on light at all times. Now before we speak on how all of this flows into one another, we do need to touch on our other weapons, as well as the artifacts and our armor mods. For our other weapons, I found myself actually running double special with the Call. First is another source of dark damage. Secondly, the Call is just really good. And if I was ever going to run double special, a rocket assisted sidearm is kind of a no-brainer. And we can also stun unstoppable champions. Now for our heavy, really just cater this to whatever activity you're doing. For instance, in Liminality, we're dealing damage to a Tormentor. So I went with things like Doom Petitioner, even Tapan, something that dealt precision damage. Then inside of the artifact, there are 4 mods that are necessary. That being Blade Stamina, Galvanic Armor, Shield Crush, and Transference. Now these are necessary, however, there are other artifact mods that definitely spices things up. But for the core build itself, those artifact mods are extremely important. Blade Stamina further increases our sword ammo economy as it refunds 3 ammo whenever we get multi-kills, which yes, counts for Arc Conductor's chain lightning kills. Galvanic Armor is also extremely important as it offers a 30% damage resist while we're amplified, and thanks to Getaway Artist, that's at all times. By the way, that paired with Facet of Protection nets you a 49.5% damage resist. Now the next mod is Shield Crush. This is a way to build further into our grenades, as it says that while you are amplifying or radiant, your grenade recharges faster and deals increased damage. Now amplifying is brought up here again, and we reap that 25% increased regeneration rates as well as damage if we toss our grenade normally. Now the last necessary mod is Transference, which can refund up to 50% of light and dark energy when getting a kill while Transcendent. And since Ergo Sum wants to be out while that's active, we'll be benefiting from this mod quite a bit. Last artifact mod I would recommend, actually actually 2 of them. If you happen to be running double special and rocking the call, you might as well take advantage of threaded blasts, where destroying a tango with a strand weapon creates a larger and more damaging explosion. Also, if you're dealing with overload champions, rock overload sword. And the last mod I would recommend are for my folks rocking Song of Flame, or if you happen to be rocking Hellion instead of Bleak Watcher, and that's Solar Fulmination. That increases that ignition damage substantially. Now, for my folks wondering, Cross, why not use Argent Blade? In my opinion, guys, it's not necessary. Shield Crush, Transference is just so good that you won't even need it. Now, lastly, for our armor mods, you can be somewhat flexible, but I like to have things like Arc Siphon, Special Ammo Finder. For our arm mods, Grenade Kickstart to guarantee we have that available. We also have Impact Induction, Focusing Strike to lower our grenade and class ability cooldowns when we use our Arcane Needle. Then for our chests, just any resist mods that's specific to that activity. Our legs, we have Recuperation as well as Invigoration. And I also like to use a Scav mod, which is probably only really necessary if you're rocking double special. If you're not, then just rock another mod that could top off your health or your abilities. Then for our class item, I like Powerful Attraction, Bomber. I even threw a special finisher in here, although to be honest, I wasn't using it all that much, but it's there just in case. Which now takes us to the gameplay loop. It's very simple. Warlocks, you want to start every engagement by consuming your grenade. This will spawn an Arc Soul in a stasis turret right there on the spot, and in that process, you will instantly gain 30% damage resistance. You'll also gain increased grenade regeneration and damage, and increased class ability regeneration, as well as Dark Transcendence energy. Now from there is when we want to focus on Ergo Sum. Simply just use the heavy attack, and you will gain Arc Conductor, which is a further 50% damage resist against arc damage. And it also allows us to start chaining that lightning. Now, the chain lightning alongside Arc Soul and Stacy will be racking up the kills while we simply run around. At this point, I don't even need to swing my sword unless I'm really just targeting something like a high health target. Now, at this point in our gameplay, we should easily have full line Transcendence, and we'll be on our way to filling up that darkness meter. Now, if Stacy and Ergo don't already have it filled, you can simply just pull out the call, or you could throw out some arcane needles. But once Transcendence is built, Ergo Sum comes back out to be spammed again. However, with Transcendence being procced, you now have 44% more damage, alongside dropping Transcendent grenades all over the place, which is effectively giving us infinite ammo. Now, while this is happening, Ergo Sum should be getting enough kills that when Transcendent ends, we should already be 50% in the way to filling up Transcendence again, and just repeat this process over and over. Now, for the most part, guys, this build is very flexible. You can use Ergo Sum initially and then proceed to consume your grenade. There's no major order to how you need to go about proccing all these things. You just want to proc everything. Arc Souls is really good at keeping up Devour. Bleak Watcher is great for locking everything down. And Ergo Sum is constantly cleaning things up, tacking on even more damage when it snags those shatters on enemies that are frozen. The only scary part is if you don't reproc Ergo Sum and Arc Conductor, as once that shield drops, you can get melted pretty fast, which is why I was using my heavy attack as often as I could. And I even changed things up as far as my perks go on Ergo Sum, more specifically choosing something that buffs my ammo capacity. I know Jagged Edge actually increases your damage by raising that impact, but because Arc Conductor is dishing out so much AoE damage on its own, I'd rather just have more ammo. And what this really just allows me to do is just mindlessly spam my heavy attack over and over. Ergolock is an incredible build, guys. This may be the strongest build I have played with all season long. And it's not that it does the most damage, or even that it's the flashiest. It's simply a build that says, hey, we're gonna lock down the battlefield, we're gonna proc Devour, and with the power of Ergo Sum and Arc Conductor, we are not gonna die. I highly advise all my Warlocks to give this a go. And even if you're not a Warlock, I'm just saying, guys, it's so damn powerful, it'll make you a Warlock for at least a day. So give it a try. Our Mobalytics link is down below, guys, if you want to check it out. I promise you that Ergolock will carry you literally through every single nightfall this season. Well, fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.